they watching, I'ma make them sweat. Put your money down, place your bets. Degenerate, yeah, I'm a sicko. Who else gon' get you to the window? I know they watching, I'ma make them sweat. Put your money down, place your bets. Degenerate, yeah, I'm a sicko.
Hello there, sports fans, and welcome to another episode of Grabo's Giblets. We are out here dropping giblets for the people. I'm your host, Denny One Time, and I'm very excited today. We got a special show, and we have two very special guests. Today is our NFL preview, so we're going to touch on NFL as it pertains to fantasy football. We're going to talk about NFL as it pertains to sports cards to buy or to possibly sell. I'm going to introduce my first guest. His name is Chase Coburn. He is a 12-year-old from Fairfield, Connecticut. He is an aspiring sports broadcaster with two podcasts, Wiz Talk with Chase and Cool Sports Network. And he's had a pretty cool guest on Cool Sports Network, so you may want to go check that out. He has a website called Chase Sports News, a newsletter, chasecoburn.substack.com. He has a YouTube show, Sports for Kids. He loves talking about sports and broadcasting them. He's looking forward to continuing to broadcast and announce games, events, and more. I met Chase as he reached out to me to appear on his podcast a few months ago. He is currently a 12-year-old on vacation with his family. He's taken an hour out of vacation to grind with Andy and I. I'm very excited. Chase, welcome to the show. Do you have anything you want to say to the listeners?
Thank you guys so much for having me. Looking forward to it.
Very excited to have you, my man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and looking forward to talking some fantasy football.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on a few topics. And second, we have Andy Cason. Andy was a 90s kid, card collector from Tampa, basking in the glory of the 2002 Buccaneers with my man Rondé Barber. He grew up to become a fantasy football grinder, a dynasty connoisseur, a two-time league winner, brush your shoulder off, Andy, who then turned back into card investor, collector, dealer at the beginning of 2020 during the peak of COVID. He now helps people through his YouTube videos and podcasts to translate fantasy football knowledge into card knowledge. I met Andy. I've been a fan of his for a while, listening to him on the Sports Card Strategy podcast with Paul Hickey. That's where I first got to know him as a talking head in this space, and actually got to meet him physically at the National Card Show in Chicago a couple of weeks ago. We had a meet up with the Sports Card Strategy guys. He is Andy Cason. Andy, welcome to the show.
Hey, I appreciate that introduction and warm welcome, Denny. Very excited to be here. This is the best time of the year to talk about football cards. I'm excited to be here and dig into this content, man.
Me too, man. I'm like a kid at Christmas time. Football season's great, but the month leading up to it is as exciting or more. Okay, we're going to start by talking about quarterbacks. I'm going to ask Chase questions that relate more to fantasy football, basically asking questions that relate to how he feels about players in relation to their current ADP. So we're talking about value here. And then as I ask Andy questions, we're going to focus more on card value. And maybe Chase bleeds into sports cards, maybe Andy bleeds into fantasy, and that's fine. It could be fluid, but that's how we're going to structure this. So Chase, let's start with your favorite three fantasy quarterbacks in comparison to ADP. Which three quarterbacks do you think have the most value and why?
So my first quarterback that I do want to mention in comparison to their average draft position is Deshaun Watson. Lindy Sports Fantasy has him as their quarterback 15 and a tier 4 quarterback. I just think that's a little disrespectful. Now, did Watson have his best season last year? No. But he only played 6 games. He was coming back from missing over a year and a half of football. And I think now this year with a full offseason of training, with weapons like Amari Cooper and David Njoku, he's going to have a good year. Remember, guys, the last time Deshaun Watson played a full season of football, he led the league in passing yards and was the quarterback 5 in fantasy. I'm not saying that's what I expect from him, but with also some rushing ability that he can bring to the table as well, I think Deshaun Watson is going to be a very good quarterback to pick up in fantasy, considering not a lot of people are really interested in picking him up. And then another guy like that who had a down year last year, who I think is going to bounce back, is Russell Wilson. Lindy Sports Fantasy has him as their quarterback 18 and a tier 5 quarterback. Last year, I know some were making fun of the Broncos' lack of success in Broncos country, let's ride and all that. But we have to think about Russell Wilson. His running back last year was Latavius Murray due to Javonte Williams' injury, and his head coach was Nathaniel Hackett. This year, we're going to have a more healthy Javonte Williams, who I expect a really big year from, and Sean Payton as their head coach, who was one of the best head coaches before leaving for Fox last year. So he's going to be in a much better system this year. I expect a great year from Jerry Jeudy as well, and I just think the team around Wilson's going to get better, so I think he'll have a good year. And then my last quarterback that I do want to mention in comparison to their average draft position is Matthew Stafford, because Lindy Sports Fantasy has him as their quarterback 21 and a tier 6 quarterback. That's below Anthony Richardson, folks. That is way too low. Think about this Rams defense. It is not good. It's Aaron Donald, and that's the defense. They're going to allow a ton of points this season, which means the Rams are going to have to pass the football a lot. Matthew Stafford is going to accumulate a ton of yards this year, and even if he has a ton of interceptions, he was the quarterback 5 in fantasy 2 years ago when he led the league in interceptions. If he continues to get that amount of yards, which I think he will in an offense like this where they're always going to be having to come back, I think he is going to have a very good fantasy year.
Interesting, yeah. Chase, I come from the real estate development world, real estate investing world, and we always talk about finding the distressed real estate, finding stuff below value. And all three of those guys you mentioned had for whatever reason, had a down year last year. Had negative press last year for various reasons. And I think I agree with you on all of these. Like in some fantasy football leagues, you might not go as deep to draft like a Stafford, but in two quarterback leagues, things like that, I think you'll see Russ and Stafford be right there. And I think Russ will play better under Peyton than he did under Nathaniel. Couldn't hack it, but we'll see. Andy, I know one of those three names is going to appear in your list. I don't know about the other two, but Andy, when it comes to top three quarterbacks that buy their sports cards, who do you like in relation to their current value?
Yeah, well, Chase touched on one, and that's Deshaun Watson. And I still, when I look at his base PSA 10 optic, that's $100 or less. I think that's a perfect price point to target it at. You got to remember, this is a $1,000 Patrick Mahomes card. And we're not expecting him to get up anywhere near that value, but we could easily project him to get to half of that. I mean, it's a realistic, because if you look at the playmakers at all levels of the Cleveland Browns defense, they've got playmakers at all levels. You bring in a new defensive coordinator. You also have a top 2 offensive line. He's a willing rusher. He, like Chase said, he was the passing yards leader in 2021. They also bring in Elijah Moore, who's an incredible man coverage beater. So you have all these things lining up for Deshaun Watson, and his values are just they're comparable to Cooper Kupp and Christian McCaffrey right now. Those guys are skill position players. So like a Prism PSA 10 for $300 when Patrick Mahomes has a $4,000 Prism PSA 10, or his rookie ticket auto for $650 or less, that's comparable to like Jalen Hurts, who is, from the 2020 draft class where the print runs are a lot higher than they are in 2017. So you've got a lot of additional like scarcity just kind of naturally there for 2017 rookie product, which makes him a really smash play right now in the sports card market.
Yeah, with Deshaun, I was so excited when I met you in Chicago to hear you say that, because I've been blabbing about Deshaun as a buy in the sports card world. All these jabronis over here at Graybo's were telling me I was wrong, and I was glad to hear the experts say it. And I'm just looking at like how you're looking at it. Like if Mahomes is at 1,000 and Deshaun's at 100, we're not thinking Deshaun will get to 1,000. But if Sean goes from 100 to 200, that's 100% return. Mahomes has to go from 1,000 to 2,000 to get that same return. And I just think that people have been so down on Deshaun, and he's still the same quarterback. He took a year and a half off, but he's still the same human being. And when you take extended absences, like for an ACL or for a year off like Le'Veon Bell did or whatever, usually you don't pop right back into full form right away. But usually your second year is when you can kind of get back into the rhythm. And I think he's in a better situation. So I agree with you. Yeah, do you have any other quarterbacks you want to talk about other than Deshaun there?
Yeah, absolutely. So my second target is actually Tua for the Miami Dolphins. He was actually the quarterback 9 in fantasy points per game last year, and he only played 13 games. That's the big, question mark around what if he gets another concussion. But They had very good pass protection last year. Their offensive line is solid. Mike McDaniels is an offensive mastermind from, the Kyle Shanahan tree. Tua had the top deep ball completion percentage in the NFL last year, second best red zone completion percentage. He's got Tyreek Hill, who's top 5 in the league against press coverage. He shreds all coverages. Jalen Waddle is top 10 against zone coverage. He's got great hands, incredible chemistry with Tua. And right now, Tua's rookie cards are trading the same as Jordan Love. But you have a lot more certainty around the level of performance you can expect from the Dolphins. And then they also have incredible playmakers at all levels of their defense. So to me, this also becomes a playoff flip. So much like Deshaun Watson, if they don't spike early in the season because they get off to that hot 3-0 start, maybe early MVP candidate, there's always playoff implications for these two teams because of how good the defense looks and just how deep the talent is on the roster and the coaching staff. The whole, when you put everything together, Vic Fangio is brought into the Miami Dolphins. He's one of the best defensive coordinators you can bring in. So I like to target a base Prism PSA 10 for $70 or less for Tua. That's a $150 card for Jalen Hurts, $250 for Joe Burrow, $300 or less rookie ticket auto for Tua, when $750 rookie ticket autos for Jalen Hurts, and the Herbert and the Burrow, those are $2,000 to $3,000 cards.
Yeah. Tua. So when you're buying Tua specifically, you are thinking about maybe waiting until the playoffs to sell him, or are you waiting to his first 3 games? Waddle and Tyreek go nuts. Are you looking to sell him this first 3 games? Are you looking to sell him in the playoffs, or what's your preferred hold for Tua?
Yeah, I'll say once I'm at that double up point with Tua, he's not a guy that I feel you want to take the profit when you can, because there is that risk that his career could potentially be over. But I will say, if you look at the flip side of that, say that did happen, he could set some type of precedent in concussion research or so. You never want to project that. You never want to wish that upon anybody. But look at what happened. It's just the real facts. Look at what happened to DeMar Hamlin's cards whenever he suffered cardiac arrest on the field. So they spiked. I mean, tragedies cause spikes in card values as well. So even if something were to happen to him like that on the field, I think you still have upside in his current card values. And then if I don't get the profit I want, like a good 100 to 150% markup, then I have the playoffs to look forward to later in the year. And I will say it's important, if you're going to buy Tua cards, I would definitely handcuff those with Mike White. He's the primary backup there. He's flashed before for the Jets. He could flash again with those weapons in the Mike McDaniel system.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Okay, so that's your second. Who's your third QB?
All right, so my third QB is Justin Fields. And sometimes you have to pay a little bit of a premium to get into these guys, but the upside is absolutely insane for Justin Fields. He was a quarterback 5 fantasy points per game basis, and that was with literally 0 wide receivers to throw to last year. Darnell Mooney was hurt most of the season, and it was an incredibly run-heavy team. He only threw for 2,242 passing yards, but his red zone completion was top 10. He threw 41 touchdowns at Ohio State in 2019 with only 3 interceptions. So a lot of people don't realize he's got a 98th percentile college quarterback rating coming out. And now he gets DJ Moore, who's been proven to be quarterback proof with over 1,000 yards receiving with nobody QBs. He's been double covered at the 4th highest rate in the NFL last year and still succeeded the majority of the time. He also had one or more broken tackle at the highest rate last year. So you get the receivers healthy, plus you have another year for guys like Chase Claypool. You have another year for head coach Matt Eberflus, the whole team. The offensive line has been invested in this offseason. The defensive secondary is solid, so you have promising talent throughout. You have a massive fan base in Chicago, and he's trading at 20 to 25% lower than Trevor Lawrence with much fewer rookie autos due to, I don't know if it was COVID or what it was, but the redemption process in 2021, Justin Fields does not have very many rookie auto cards. So I look at like his base dominance rated rookie, PSA 10, less than $45. That's getting close to a $100 card right now for Trevor Lawrence, or his Optic Hollow PSA 10 for $200 or less. or his raw optic hollow for $50 or less is where I'm targeting those at. And his silver prism rookie auto, I would say $500 or less is a buy when you compare it to what Trevor Lawrence's prices are at, about $1K or higher now.
Yeah, Fields is interesting because, in the sports card world, the things that usually push value, team success, playoff success, obviously is a big one. But there's times where somebody like Fields, his team doesn't have to be that great, but his fantasy stats are so significant that people talk about him. His use of his legs, like he's an incredible potential fantasy asset. Obviously, there's some risk there, but last year when he had those 3 or 4 games he was blowing up, the Bears were still not good, but he was talked about all the time, and his cards did spike last year. So very interesting. Well, cool. Well, let's transition to our next question, revolving around quarterbacks. Is best first-year starter. So this could be a rookie that's going to start. It could be someone like Jordan Love who's taking over from an incumbent starter like Rodgers. And we even will allow you to pick someone who started a few games last year but maybe didn't start the whole season. So first time starting as QB1 for your team. Chase, who are you the most excited about from a fantasy standpoint?
From a fantasy standpoint, I am really excited to see how Kenny Pickett does with the Steelers' offense this year, now that he's going to get a full season to start. Last year, he was a little bit of a conservative quarterback, and that is the thing that you do have to be concerned about, because in fantasy, you can't really rely on a conservative quarterback. However, I do think Kenny Pickett does have high potential. He has a really talented offense. Pat Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, I'm going to talk about him later. There's just a ton of guys on this offense, not to mention Najee Harris, who's pretty decent in the passing game. I mean, from weeks 11 to 18 last year, Pickett had a 5-to-1 touchdown-interception ratio and over 1,000 yards with a 5-2 record. The guy wins. The guy is clutch. He can score inside the red zone really well, and he can lead comebacks like we saw in week 17 against Baltimore last year. He just is a really clutch football player, and I think we could expect a ton from him this year. I do hate to say this because I am a Ravens fan, and I do not like Pittsburgh Steelers at all, but I think Kenny Pickett will have a pretty good year. The guy I do think you should look out for, though, because right now he is not starting, but if he does start, I would look out for Will Levis. And everyone's talked about Bryce Young as a rookie quarterback, and I'm still going with Pickett. But you got to keep Levis in mind for a later season if your quarterback gets hurt or anything. And he takes over for Tannehill. I mean, this is 2 straight drafts now that Tennessee has taken a quarterback. They seem to really not have that much trust in Ryan Tannehill. They have a really talented offense. I expect a breakout year from Traylon Burks, and DeAndre Hopkins is still a good wide receiver. And in case things don't work out, Derrick Henry has the running game to open up the passing game. So, I mean, I don't know why this guy wasn't a top 5 pick. You can ask the scouts that, but this guy was a projected top 5 pick. And I think the talent and, the fact that he is an NFL-ready quarterback, the stuff is there for Will Levis. So if he does get a starting nod, I could see him having a decent fantasy year this year.
Yeah, I think, Chase, is because Levis eats his bananas without unpeeling them. I think when that video surfaced, his stock across the board went down. So I as a future draft pick, if you ever want to get drafted in the NFL, Chase, don't put out weird videos of yourself the week before the draft. No,
mayonnaise and coffee. What are we doing?
Yeah, I agree. Just a weirdo. Sometimes weirdo can be good, but I agree. I'm really interested to see Pickett. I think the Steelers, if you look at, they groom their quarterbacks. They take their time with them. They invest in them. They don't turn over quarterbacks every year like the Titans are likely going to do. As you mentioned, with possibly going to Malik, possibly going to Levis, but I am excited about seeing Pickett mature in Pittsburgh. Okay, Andy, first year starter. Who are you the most excited about from a card standpoint?
Yeah, from a card standpoint, it comes down to 2 guys. There's 2 second-year guys between Desmond Ridder and Sam Howell. They're both very interesting, but Desmond Ridder, he has the better supporting cast around him to be successful. They're also not going to ask him to do very much. He does have 98th percentile speed coming from college, so he was quite good at Cincinnati. He did end up going in the 3rd round. But when you look at, obviously, the run game, they do have a top 10 offensive line, according to Pro Football Focus. You look at Drake London, Kyle Pitts, the weapons they have. It's very good. They're not going to ask him to do a whole lot. He can hand it off to Bijan, Tyler Algier, get Cordell Patterson involved, and set him up for some nice play action, nice quick short passes. Drake London was incredible against press coverage, man coverage last year. So, yeah, I would look at Desmond Ridder, but then I think you have that same kind of grit and clutchiness from Sam Howell, who is a guy that slid all the way to the 5th round last year. And I'm not nearly as bullish on Will Levis. Maybe it is the bananas or the mayo in the coffee that I heard about, but I'm not as bullish on Will Levis. I think Anthony Richardson's the best quarterback from this draft class, just with his rushing upside. I mean, the guy is a freak athlete. He's basically like Derrick Henry as a quarterback with a cannon for an arm. And I mean, it's going to be crazy, the potential highlight reels that he could put up. And he's already got a rushing quarterback friendly head coach in Shane Steichen, who came over from the Eagles as their offensive coordinator. So he knows how to deploy around that type of mobile quarterback rushing attack. So I'm very excited to see what Anthony Richardson, I think ultimately he has the best kind of rookie quarterback season, but the upside is there for Desmond Ridder to lead a playoff team, and Sam Howell he could put up some pretty big, like his ADP is very low. He's got mobility. He's got incredible weapons too. He could way out exceed his ADP.
Yeah. No, I think everyone's excited to see Anthony Richardson play. And I hope he does well. He's a unique athlete, Cam Newton type athlete, which should be fun to see. All right, so let's go into the running back world. So running backs historically have not been the big chase in sports cards because their careers are short. They can get injured and go away in a second. But in the fantasy world, running backs have kind of been the thing for the last 10 years, really until this year. This year is the first time you're seeing receivers kind of take over the first round of fantasy football drafts for a variety of reasons. But let's talk about the running backs we do like in comparison to ADP. Chase, give me 3 running backs you're excited to maybe grab before the rest of your friends draft them.
Yeah, a running back that I'm definitely curious to see this year in fantasy, and he's one of my top 3 fantasy running backs in comparison to their ADP, is Brian Robinson Jr., one of my favorite players in the NFL, not on the Baltimore Ravens. Lindy Sports Fantasy has him as their running back 24 and a tier 5 running back. I just think that's too low. The guy only played 12, 13 games last year, ran for over 66 yards a game. The only risky thing he got is he hadn't proved that he could score a lot of touchdowns in his rookie season. But I think with that strength and his elusiveness and agility, I think that touchdown rate will go significantly up. And kind of going away from what Andy said, I actually am one of the people that does not trust Sam Howell. I don't think he's really going to make it that much in this league. So I think, especially in the second half of the year, I think Brian Robinson's going to be getting the ball a ton. And I expect over a 1,000-yard year from Brian Robinson. And if you could get that and a ton of touchdowns as the running back 24, I think that would be great value. This is one of the picks that I've had for a while now, and that is James Cook. Lindy Sports Fantasy has him as their running back 35 and a tier 6 running back, And that just makes me laugh because, sure, James Cook did not have a great first half of the season last year. Yep, they do. They had Devin Singletary in the running back. He wasn't getting as many touches. Second half of the year, 360 yards, 1 touchdown, 5.9 yards per attempt, and that was still with him being the backup running back. I think now that he's going to be able to truly I'm pretty sure he will get the starting job over Damian Harris, and I just think the potential is there. I think he's really strong, so I think he'll be able to get in the end zone a ton, and I expect an over 1,000-yard rushing season from James Cook. And I think, again, kind of like Brian Robinson, if you can get that, but this time as the running back 35, that's just amazing. And then another guy taking over a starting job this year, Alexander Madison. Lindy Sports Fantasy has him as their running back 46 and a tier 7 quarterback and running back. How is the only way I can describe that. That is, if you could somehow get him there, that'll be one of the best value picks in the entire draft of fantasy. Madison had 6 total touchdowns in 2022 as the backup running back. Cook stayed healthy all season long, but when Cook has been healthy, Madison has proved he can get in the end zone and that he can be a reliable number one running back in Minnesota. I expect probably not a 1,000-yard year, but I think he's going to be a monster inside the red zone like he has been essentially for the majority of his career. He just hasn't been able to really show it on a high volume because he hasn't been getting too many opportunities. So I expect over 10 touchdowns from Alexander Madison this year, and that would be pretty good fantasy-wise. So those are my three running backs, kind of similar in the way that they're all taking over a starting role and have potential to get a ton of touchdowns. So, yeah, those are my three, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how Robinson, Cook, and Madison all play this
Yeah,
year.
I like those guys as well. Like the Commanders are, we're 2 hours away from DC, so that's our closest team, and so that's a team that I've rooted for my whole life, and we follow the most. And I think most folks around here are bullish on Robinson and are kind of fading Antonio Gibson. So I hope that plays out that way. And then Madison, really curious. He's obviously shown he can do it. Just a matter of can he do it as the full-time starter. And I guess big news, in the last 24 hours, I guess we heard that that Cook is now with the Jets. So that's pretty interesting. I haven't had time to fully digest that yet from a betting standpoint, but I think that does help the Jets quite a bit.
I personally do not like that the Jets signed him. It's probably a good move for their team, but I'm so looking forward to seeing how Breece Hall could be this year as finally a number one running back. Yeah. And now Dalvin Cook's kind of going to take everything away, and we may never see Breece Hall now reach his potential that we all know he could have reached.
Yeah, if they're paying Dalvin Cook that much, like they're kind of putting their eggs in there this year, maybe this year, the next 2 years with Aaron Rodgers and paying him and paying Dalvin Cook. It's like let's do it now or not do it. So I expect them to feed Cook the ball quite a bit, but we'll see. Give Breece a little more time to recover from his injury and maybe not have to be the main guy. And then maybe in the future, Breece Hall could be a big person there in New York. Okay, Andy, what I know in sports cards we typically don't buy a lot of running backs. We don't tout buying a lot of running backs. But if I put a gun to your head and said, what 3 running backs are you buying in relation to their current value? Who do you like?
Oh, yeah, and I've actually had a lot of success with running backs and wide receivers over the past couple years. So, on the Football Card Quest, we are not afraid to buy running backs. It's a lot of quicker flips. So I'll tell you some of the best plays in the market right now are on rookie running backs. But when it comes to sports card supply and demand, Austin Eckler is an absolute buy right now. I have no problem pressing the draft button on Austin Eckler in the early first round. I also have no problem spending $100 on a rookie ticket auto, and I'll tell you why. And that's because he's only got 23. I don't know where he got 30. 23 different cards printed for him from his rookie season. It's basically contenders or select concourse, and that's it. So when you get a base select for under $20, it's actually a good deal. Or if you get a rookie ticket auto for under $100, it's actually a good deal. If you go and look at a similar situation from 2017, you could look at George Kittle or Taysom Hill. And those guys have rookie ticket autos that routinely sell from $250 to $350. And Austin Eckler has a potential to finish as the RB1 overall he's been a top 3 RB in fantasy football for 3 seasons in a row. You add Kellen Moore to the Chargers offense, who ran the Dallas Cowboys offense last year as a top 3 pace of play offense. It's a more balanced approach. And Austin Eckler is just going to feast in this offense. They also added a Pro Bowl offensive tackle in Rashawn Slater. This really strengthens the Chargers offensive line. So that's going to improve some rushing lanes for him. He was number 1 receiving running back last year. He was number 1 in touchdowns. He was number 1 in target share. He's number 7 in evaded tackles, number 2 in yards created. So Austin Eckler literally has proven that he can be the best in the league, and they've got literally no depth chart competition for him. So I look at him as a smash buy because I look at him as a guy that could, with how scarce his cards are, they could easily go up to several $100s and never look back.
Yeah, I think he's one of those few guys. The reason why receivers are taken over the first round is because there used to be a lot more of these. Now there's only a handful of running backs that take all 3 downs, get the red zone carries, and can catch the ball, right? And if you're looking, it's a short list, right? It's McCaffrey, it's Eckler. People think Bijan might be one of those guys. People think Saquon can still be one of those guys, but it's not many that do all of those things. And so I still like Eckler. I've heard some talking heads on fantasy radio not as high on him, and they're fading him, and I don't get it. I mean, I really don't get it. So I think all of us here are Eckler fans. So, all right, that's cool. So Eckler, who else?
Yeah. So my other guy is J.K. Dobbins, and right now is a perfect time to try and snipe him, and then flip at the beginning of the season, because him and Jonathan Taylor were both kind of pseudo holding out to try and get better contracts, but it's not going to happen. They've already basically check folded. They're returning to the practice field. They're accepting their fates. And the Ravens did not add a single running back to the team during the draft. Ted Monken is the former offensive coordinator for the Georgia Bulldogs. He helped guide them to 2 national championships, and along the way, they posted 198 rushing yards on average per game. He also has 8 years of NFL experience. His most recent NFL season was 2019 with the Cleveland Browns, where Nick Chubb had the league's second most rushing yards of 1,494 yards and tallied 8 touchdowns. Baker Mayfield also had his career season that year. So you can see, by the Ravens bringing in Monken, they signed Odell Beckham, they draft Zay Flowers in the first round, and focusing the rest of their draft capital on defense and offensive linemen, they're preparing to reel Lamar's rushing game in a bit, have him pass more. And we already know that Dobbins was highly touted 4-star recruit out of high school. He lit the college world on fire at Ohio State, where he ran for 2,003 yards as a junior, averaging 6.7 yards per carry and scored 21 touchdowns. This guy's got 4.37 40-yard dash, so his overall height-adjusted speed score is in the elite percentile of the league. And he recovered last year from an injury. It was unfortunate in 2021 that he tore his ACL in preseason. It took him a full year and a half basically to recover. He only played 8 games last year, but he still managed to rack up 520 rushing yards, 5.7 yards per carry, which was 4th best in the league. So in just that 8-game span, he also boasted the 2nd best juke rate and the 3rd best breakaway run rate, which are runs over 15 yards. So now you get him fully healthy. And his rookie cards, because of the little holdout and the lack of training camp hype and preseason hype for him, they're at rock bottom prices compared to Jonathan Taylor, you can compare him to DeAndre Swift. You could get a National Treasures J.K. Dobbins for like $50, rookie ticket autos for $20 or less. That's where I target those right now. $100 or less for a PSA 10 rookie ticket auto. It's an absolute smash buy. It leaves you a 2 to 3x upside in the values of his cards after, let's say, the first 3 weeks of the season. The Ravens open up against the Texans. I mean, it's a smash start to the beginning of the season here for the Ravens.
Interesting, man. That's not one name I expected you to say, and it's very interesting looking at where his current pricing is. Like, it can't go down, right? The pricing can't go down. Chase, you want to say something?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to add on to that. As a Ravens fan, I actually really do. Not just because I'm a Ravens fan, but I've been someone that just in general, even like as the draft went on in 2020, I was a really big fan of J.K. Dobbins. I think when healthy, from weeks 14 to 17 last year, really the only weeks he was healthy after his midseason surgery, he led the league in rushing yards. So, when healthy, we know he can be a great running back. I think all he needs to do is stay healthy, and I think more people will realize how talented he is, and I can definitely understand how that card value could skyrocket immediately.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so Eckler, Dobbins, and who's your third guy, Andy?
My third guy, and a lot of this is correlated with the strength of the offense, the strength of the offensive line, the pace of play. And so my third guy is Kenneth Gainwell for the Philadelphia Eagles. This guy produces when given the ball. If you go back to the playoffs last year, he actually usurped Miles Sanders in the playoffs. They clearly were wanting to use him in the most high value leverage situations. He put up 121 yards against the Giants in the playoffs. He had multiple red zone carries against the 49ers and the Chiefs. He's the guy that last year Nick Sirianni had shirts made up with his face on it that they were wearing in the pressers. He's a guy that shows up early for practice, stays late. He was also rested this past week with Boston Scott there as the 2 starters when they clearly were playing DeAndre Swift and any other healthy running back. I also have a serious concern around the health and just the overall work ethic from DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny. These guys have never played full seasons. Knock on wood, Kenneth Gainwell has never had an injury in his professional career. And the guy actually put up around 1,500 yards, 1,459 rushing yards in 2019 at Memphis, 13 touchdowns. And he's also proved that he's a great receiver. So he's got the capability to be an RB1, and behind the league's best offensive line and a clear Super Bowl contending team here, I want pieces of this offense. And right now, this guy has the highest upside, but also the lowest prices. Once again, National Treasures out of 99 RPA. I sniped at the National for $50. You can get those $50 or less on eBay, and that's a $100 to $150 card for Travis Etienne. We're talking Kenneth Gainwell probably has another 2 to 3x upside in his values on that team.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, man. Bargain shopping. I like it. All right, so let's throw out our best sleeper running back. You can say whoever you want. I'm going to give you some names just to spur conversation. In the fantasy world, the sports card world, people like Rachaad White, people like these rookies that are maybe second or third on the depth chart today, but might make an appearance later in the season. So some of these guys don't have great cards yet. They just have like this score. They don't have the prism out yet. But like throw out some names like Charbonnet in Seattle, Bigsby in Jacksonville, and A-Chain down in Miami. Those are some folks that I've been hearing about, but I would like to know, Chase, first from you, any sleeper running backs you want to mention, and then Andy, I'll throw the same question to you.
I have two, actually none of the players that you did mention, even though I do like Rachaad White this year, but I just decided not to mention him. There are two running backs that I just can't decide between, so I'm going to say both. The first one I came up with is A.J. Dillon, and a few years ago we already kind of saw him break out into the stage in Green Bay. We saw he could be a capable running back, and fantasy-wise he was a decent fantasy running back. But I really think this is the year where he can take his game to the next level. We already know he's an incredible red zone running back. That's what always makes him that late round pickup in fantasy, because you know he can rack up touchdowns. But this year, with the Packers moving away from Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love a quarterback, to be honest, Jordan Love, even though we really think he's going to come in, I feel like I've never heard someone say that he's going to come in and be bad. We just really don't know. Like, we really have not seen enough time in this league to say, all right, this is what Jordan Love is going to be. We really just don't know yet. And so there are just a ton of question marks surrounding their passing game. And this year, I think they're going to focus more on the run. And I think we've already seen over the past few years, their running game is no longer just Aaron Jones. It's becoming more of a 1A, 1B backfield with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. So I think A.J. Dillon's going to have a pretty good year, and I think he would be a decent pickup in fantasy, especially if you need a guy who's going to get in the red zone and get you touchdowns. He's definitely going to do that for you. The second running back I want to mention, and Andy mentioned Kenneth Gainwell in Philadelphia. I'm mentioning another one of Philadelphia's running backs, and that is Rashad Penny. This guy is one of the most underrated running backs in football. I think while, again, the Eagles have a ton of rushing talent. They have Jalen Hurts. They have DeAndre Swift, who they picked up. They do have Kenneth Gainwell, as Andy mentioned earlier. But overall, this team with the Seahawks, with Rashad Penny, were so good in the second half of the 2021 season when they finally let him run the ball. 671 yards and 6 touchdowns in 5 games for Rashad Penny. I'm not saying he's going to be playing at that exact same level, but with DeAndre Swift's injury history and Kenneth Gainwell's lack of, I'd say, experience as like a really big running back, I could see Rashad Penny really having a decent fantasy season. And not that we should expect an injury from DeAndre Swift, but we also shouldn't not expect it. So Rashad Penny could be a really decent pickup in the late rounds because I think he could really burst onto the scene again with Philadelphia.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I like it. Andy, best sleeper running back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Penny's he's gotta be healthy. I think that's the key there with him and Swift. Plus, the Eagles got them for free. When you look at their contracts and what they had to pay for him. I really like Devin A-Chain. I'm on this Miami stack. I also look at his values. I mean, the guy runs a 4.32, 99 percentile speed. Mike McDaniels beat the table for him in the 3rd round. So he's going to utilize him in his scheme. He can run it up the gut. He can bounce it to the outside. He was dominant at Texas A&M. He was an early declare for college, which is a key indicator that this guy is really good. So he's a recipe for breakout with that kind of speed and being able to score from anywhere on the field. I would say it is hard to target his cards, but you can find like Legacy Futures out right now, which is a chrome finish card, and you could potentially find those in pro uniform, even if it's got like a plain color patch. It's got a rookie auto, it's got a pro uniform. Those are serial numbered out at like 249 to down to 100. And if you could pick those up for less than $30, I know it seems like a lot because a year from now, when all his sets are out, it's probably only going to be a $15 card. But right now, it's got easy $60 to $70 flip upside potential. You look at Deuce Vaughn on the Dallas Cowboys, who had the best preseason week 1 out of any of the rookies. I mean, the guy, his Legacy Futures autos are now $100 plus. And yeah, you have a Dallas Cowboys bonus there. So for that reason, like you can get Devon A-Chain's cards a lot cheaper, but they still have similar upside when you factor in how good he is and ability to score from anywhere on the field.
Yeah, interesting. All right, and I'll tell you, got 14 minutes. I got a hard stop, so let's go through the receivers a little faster. Chase, top 3 fantasy receivers in comparison to ADP. Who do you like?
I really like George Pickens. I mentioned Kenny Pickett earlier. George Pickens is also, I mean, I'd say I like him. I can't really like him because he's a Steeler, but I mean, I love his game. Lindy Sports Fantasy has him as their wide receiver 41 and a tier 5 receiver. I think this is the year where George Pickens becomes officially the number 1 receiver in Pittsburgh. And if Kenny Pickett progresses the way I think he will, I think George Pickens is going to have a monster season. The guy has great hands. We've seen the guy make great catches all the time. He's a great route runner. There are very little wide receivers in the league that I would rather have to create separation with their cornerback than George Pickens. And if he doesn't, he still most of the time catches the ball. He's just an incredible receiver who is talented at so many different things. And I think this is a year where if Pittsburgh truly does commit to Kenny Pickett and a passing system in Pittsburgh, I think this could be a 1,300-yard year from George Pickens, and a year where next year in a keeper league, he could be considered to be kept, or at least in regular leagues, just where he resets a top 20 pick in fantasy when we're talking about him next year. I think George Pickens has so much potential for this upcoming year. Another one now, we're going to the other side of the AFC North. I'm going with Odell Beckham Jr. of the Baltimore Ravens. Lindy Sports Fantasy has him as their wide receiver 45 and a tier 6 receiver. He's finally going to be a number 1 receiver. There is questions how he will return from injury. Is Lamar Jackson going to be good enough in the passing game to, while they are going to a passing system, is he going to be a good enough passer to really make his receivers great, like some other quarterbacks and playmakers are in this league? So I do think Odell will have a good season in Baltimore, and I think his deep game is going to be exceptional, and I think Lamar and Odell are going to connect on multiple deep touchdowns. And I think Odell also, the problem with the Ravens passing offense last year, they didn't have that many players that were really good at route running to get in the end zone. You know who their best route runner is on this team? Odell Beckham Jr. He's going to be a red zone monster as well. And then my final one is the one I'm most passionate about. Michael Thomas. Lindy Sports Fantasy has him as their wide receiver 60 and a tier 8 receiver. What's going on, guys? The last time that this guy was healthy, he was the undoubted, undebatable number 1 receiver in fantasy. And yes, he's only played 10 games in 3 seasons now. I get it. But when healthy, he's got Derek Carr quarterback. When healthy, I still think talent-wise, he is the best receiver on this team. And I think he could have a good year, even if it's like a 1A, 1B thing with Olave, even if he's the number 2 option, as long as he stays healthy. I think Michael Thomas is a good receiver, and I think he will have a really good year fantasy-wise. So the fact that he's the wide receiver 60 behind Rashid Shaheed in New Orleans is just absolutely insane to me. He's going to have a decent fantasy year.
Awesome. Pickens, Odell, and Michael Thomas. Andy, how about you? Top 3 receivers to buy in relation to their current value.
I've totally pivoted off of Odell. I think he's had too many lower body injuries. I think Zay Flowers, they drafted him in the first round out of Boston College. Zay Flowers was insanely dominant at Boston College. He's already been touted, and it's not just been 1 or 2 tweets. Like, he's been touted as the best looking wide receiver on that field for Baltimore. Going back for the past month, it's been a consistent drumbeat. You could see in the first preseason game that defenders were having to hold him to literally keep him from getting open. I think that Odell's going to have some spike games for sure, but it's Zay Flowers, in my opinion, that's going to have the biggest season here for the Ravens. So, and he's a rookie, and it wasn't like he had this phenomenal preseason week one. So there is a little dip. Yes, you have to pay a premium to get into his cards, but I still think if you can buy like a rookie premier hollow, those exclusive cards from the NFLPA Panini hosted event earlier in the summer, if you can still get that card for like $40 or under, seems like a lot, but those can easily be sold for 90 to 100. You look at guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, that's where Gibbs is at. So the upside is there for Zay Flowers. I think we might have lost Denny there, but I'll keep going. So my other two wide receivers, Terry McLaurin and DJ Moore. DJ Moore's market's been going wild the past couple days, but if you can still get his mid-tier rookie autos for around $30 or less, he's a definite buy. This guy's an elite separator and a yak monster. He's got easy 1,500 yard and double-digit touchdown upside. Terry McLaurin, he just dominates at getting open. From a singular wide receiver standpoint, he had 81.7% success rate against press coverage, 75% success rate against man coverage. He runs a very sophisticated route tree. He's got incredible hands. You could still potentially get his mid-tier rookie ticket autos for around $30 to $40. Both great targets. So,
yeah,
Chase,
I think someone. I know you also wanted to mention some. Sorry, I think some of your internet's coming out there. But whenever you are done, I know you were also going to mention some polarizing wide receivers.
Yeah, I see that Denny's got Garrett Wilson, CeeDee Lamb, Jackson Smith-Njigba, question mark. Out of those three, Chase, which one would you? Well, Garrett Wilson and CeeDee Lamb have a very comparable ADP. So just between Garrett Wilson and CeeDee Lamb, who would you rather take at, let's say, the 1.12, like at the end of the first round?
That's tough because I think Garrett Wilson has more potential. I mean, they're both with a quarterback that I don't know I trust. They're still good, but Dak Prescott led the league in picks, and Aaron Rodgers is 39 years old. So while they're still good, I don't really trust their quarterback position. I mean, CeeDee's more proven. I think I'd go CeeDee Lamb because I also think Green Bay, with Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall in the backfield, I think they're going to be running it a lot. But at the same time, Dallas does have Tony Pollard. That stuff, I am going to go CeeDee Lamb. I think he's more proven. I think it's a safer pick. And I don't think Dak Prescott will be as bad as he was last year in the turnover category. So I do think he will be a better receiver next year. So I would go CD. But Andy, I'm curious, what are your thoughts? Who would you go with?
Yeah, I'm torn. Aaron Rodgers plays slow, so I am a little bit hesitant to think that Garrett Wilson could have a true wide receiver one season, and that's where he's being sold at right now. Like if you look at his card price, especially the $100 base rookie ticket auto, I mean he's basically kind of going at the same tier as a Justin Jefferson. CeeDee Lamb has that Dallas Cowboys bonus. He is the locked-in wide receiver one there. He is best comparable to Jerry Rice, according to PlayerProfiler.com. So I really like his upside. I'm concerned about what Brian Schottenheimer is going to do with Mike McCarthy for their offense. It can't be better than what they had with Kellen Moore. So I'm concerned about them regressing a little bit in terms of pace of play, but I still think I like CeeDee Lamb better just from a volume standpoint. Aaron Rodgers did bring in Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, plus they have a whole suite of weapons. Now, Garrett Wilson was incredible in his rookie season, again, separating, getting open, great hands, the whole 9 yards. He was a number 10 overall draft pick last year for a reason, but at the ADPs, I'm going CeeDee Lamb too.
Hey guys, had a little disconnect there on my end. Thank you guys for carrying the show in my absence. Fitz is going to have to patch these two recordings together. So it looks like you got through the receiver, so great, because we have a time stop here in a couple of minutes. Last question. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? Just name the team. You can't explain anything. Just tell me the team name. Andy, who's going to win the Super Bowl?
The Eagles.
Chase, who's going to win the Super Bowl?
No bias. Lamar breaks out. Ravens.
I love it. All right, I'm actually going with the Eagles as well. Chase and Andy, really appreciate you guys joining us today. You guys brought very interesting content. No one's going to watch this or listen to this and say they just read off chalk. You guys dug deep. You brought some interesting takes, and I really appreciate you. Fitz will have his hands full trying to patch these two recordings together, but he's up for the challenge. Really appreciate you guys joining us. For those listening, thanks for riding along with Graybows. I hope you enjoyed both Chase and Andy's takes on fantasy football, card values, players to buy and sell. For details and show notes, you can go to graybows.co/giblets. Please email us at info@graybows.co. Follow us on the gram at graybows_cards. You can always stop by our card shop located at 214 East Gray Street in the Arts District of Richmond, Virginia. Thank you guys for riding with Graybows. On the count of three, Andy and Chase, can you yell giblets for me? 1, 2, 3. Giblet!
Giblets!
Giblets!
Thank
I always
you
thought
guys.
it was giblets, but
When I go to sleep, I don't see sheep, see dollar signs. Underdog, got him beat the odds for the 100th time at a money line. Brock Purdy was irrelevant, now I'm at the front like a cutting line. G5 to the power 5, Gray was on fire like it's summertime. I know they watching, I'ma make them sweat. Put your money down, place your bets. Degenerate, yeah, I'm a sicko. Who else gon' get you to the window? I know they watching, I'ma make them sweat. Put your money down, place your bets. Degenerate, yeah, I'm a sicko. Who else gon' get you to the window?